zones around them, your drinking water, help me out with the words, Cara, your drinking water protection areas. And as more development occurs, the opportunities for that water become more difficult. So we're encouraging you folks to look farther into the future as opposed to just the current needs. Water conservation is also a major goal for the board, which leads us to another epiphany. In this time I've been dealing with water, I've noticed that there's one thing that all Western water users have in common, and that is that we all believe our neighbors use too much. My philosophy on conservation, my philosophy, not necessarily the board's, and one I've been trying to work with the board on, is we don't need to judge what are good or bad uses of water. As long as it's being used and somebody's getting the dedicated purpose and meeting their needs with that water, that's what water's for. We all drink water, we all use water to wash our cars, we bathe with it, whatever you want to do. What I'm more concerned with is wasteful water practices. And I can use a couple examples of that. I'm not concerned if you want to wash your car twice today and it rains in the middle of the day, you want to wash your car a second time. It's a useful purpose of that water. You're getting what your intent out of that water. Our concern is whether you leave the hose running while you're having lunch. Okay? Another example of that would be some of our irrigation practices. And most of us are well aware that watering your lawn at 2 p.m. is probably not an efficient use of water. We're not going to tell you that you shouldn't have a lawn. You can have a lawn. What we're going to tell you is that you should probably water it at a different time of the day. And to that means we have worked out a watering guide that will be distributed and promoted next March that will hopefully help with our irrigation practices. Outdoor watering currently uses about 80% of the municipal water that we're using. Places with heavy, heavy restrictions like Vegas are down to 50%, but they're still using 50%. The other thing about our green space is that it does provide a community service and a value to us. We need those green spaces. We play on those turfs. Okay, we need them. They also provide us a bank account to some extent. So if you're running short on a budget, you cut out the things that you don't have to have. For instance, it might be your family vacation that costs you $5 to $10 grand this year if you just can't afford it. If we run out of water, the things we can afford to lose are some of our green spaces. We can pay somebody to fallow their fields for a year and move on. But what we really don't want to do is tell people they can't be using water indoors, they can't be drinking water, or we need to be trucking water from another area. So we need to be careful about what they call hardening our water demand. We can't conserve to the point where we have no way to deal with the drought. And the water board realizes that. Once again, at this point in time, we're not in a serious situation. But what the board would like to do is work on wasteful water practices through education and not regulation.
So not proposing ordinance or resolution, but just
at this point in time,
guides.
I personally believe that education will take us to at least a 10% water savings, a simple awareness through an educational campaign of what practices can be used to not waste water and still get the desired outcome, to use less water and still get the same desired outcome, whatever that outcome might be. Can probably, I'm thinking at least 10% of our water we could probably cut those uses, cut that use.
And I would say even higher. I'd say 10 to 15.
Yeah, it's just a ballpark figure. It's just throwing a figure out there.
I was going to start just from the example of you don't need to water a lawn every day. And there's a certain route I walk in town in the mornings when people are not watering. I'll just lean over. These things scare me. People are not they screech. People are not watering at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They're watering at 5 a.m., but they're watering every single day. And I think, you can do even your lawns much less frequently and still have a green lawn. So those kind of things I think would have a massive savings.
this goes beyond just the citizens of Moab. It also, we're talking about the institutions and the people who run those institutions, as well as our commercial water uses. We plan on educating everybody. This doesn't come down on, this should not come down on the shoulders of the residents of Moab per se, but it should come down on the entire community, is what I'm trying to tell you. We are working on commercial uses and developing exactly how much water the commercials are using, the commercial industries are using. I would like to note that there's a statistic that you have seen several times, and you will probably see again. And the state water resources like to use that statistic, and that is the per capita water use. Okay, statistics are interesting. I actually have a degree in statistics, and I have a problem with that statistic. It's not meaningful or relevant to our community. The measurement is supposed to be measuring how much water is being used per individual. Our community has 5,243 people living here year-round, our current per capita, whereas actually we have a fair number of transients here, and the transients are here permanently.
Tourists are here permanently.
They are.
Yeah.
And so we're supporting 1.6 to 2.6 the amount of the population we currently have with our water resources. And that statistic, that per capita statistic, does not take into account that water use. So according to the state, our water use is over 200 gallons per person per day, which is much higher than the state's average. However, if you take into account that we probably have twice that many people here on a regular basis, we're actually supporting our water use not only falls in line, but we're underneath a lot of the state of Utah and other arid towns. We do a good job. We're already doing a pretty good job, you guys. I'm happy with actually our water uses and what's going on. And we're in good shape. We do have to work for the future, and we are concerned, like I said, with some of the options out there in land use and water development at the same time. I'd like to also mention that we are also concerned with other aspects of our water budget, including stormwater, water reuse, and secondary water reuse. I'm not sure how far I want to delve into that at this point in time, but there is a potential to save a lot of money by investing in what people call green infrastructure. I don't like that term. It has implications to me. I'd prefer to use the term called water-wise. And I would like you to note that water-wise is also money. The nexus between water resources, energy resources, and money is huge. And if we can use our water efficiently and wisely, not only our municipal drinking water, but our storm water, secondary water, and other water sources, we have the potential to add a lot to this community and save a little money at the same time. Okay. I was not planning on taking 40 minutes. I was planning on taking 20. I didn't leave myself very many time for questions, but I'm looking forward to it one more year as chair of this board. So with that being said, I will take questions, and I have time for plenty of them, and if I don't answer them, the other board members can.
Council?
Oh, well, I just wanted to ask you, thank you guys for the quick reference guide, which I found very useful, and I'm keeping handy. Keep looking at it. A lot of stuff to digest there. I think we do get a lot of questions from residents, and I don't know in the grand scheme of the bucket if this is a big thing or a small thing, but since people ask, I thought I'd ask you guys. I tend to get the questions of, would we be better off as a community if we were requiring some more water-saving devices for new development, you know, whether it's low-flow toilets or da-da-da-da-da, and I just didn't know if you guys are getting into little bits and pieces of the debate like that, or if you have opinions about that sort of thing, recommendations.
We are getting into little bits and pieces about the debate. As a matter of fact, we talk about that very often. However, I'd like to note that we actually believe that, or at least I believe, that water education will do us better than regulation. And I believe Rosemary and others in here are providing that information to the public, and as that that information gets disseminated, at some point in time will be a turning point where instead of asking whether we should regulate, people will just be asking, where can I get that? Okay, and that includes your price structure for the commercial operations. You increase the price structures, when they start using large amounts of water, people start going, how can I conserve water? I don't necessarily at this point in time, I don't believe at this point in time that this community is not just ready, but it isn't necessary to have those kind of regulations put in at this point in time.
Thanks.
If I may, Arnie, I just wanted to point out one critical person who works for the water board. She's right here. She's our right-hand man, so to speak. And that's Eve Talman over here, who was one of the, or maybe the founder of the Water Advisory Board in the first place. So I just want to point out to her that I'm greatly indebted to the many things that she's done supporting all of us on the water board. So thank you, Eve.
Thank you, right-hand woman.
Whoa, man.
Oh, you get the idea. And the only thing I might want to point out is that on the subject of water hardening, a subject that's come up between western Colorado and farther west slopes is the idea of using agricultural water as a buffer, as it were. In other words, in years of plenty, farmers grow hay and alfalfa and whatever, and everybody's happy. In years when it's dry and there's a hard water demand in the cities for water that has to be drunk day in and day out, whether there's a drought going on or not. The idea then is to convince farmers to fallow their fields, and that irrigation water that they would have used on their crops instead ends up for city use, and then of course somebody has to pay the farmers for their fallowing, so it doesn't come free, but it is a way of buffering, if you will, the demand. So that's, in addition to that, a lot of people here in the area like having those ag fields out there, however you may feel about growing, crops in the dry west. But me, I think it's a very interesting idea, and it's something that hopefully we'll explore further. Finally, Ken Combe, who's the hydrologist that the city hired, we're still waiting on his water budget report to come out before too much longer, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, if I didn't stress our concern with water quantity enough, I think I spent 10 minutes talking about, 10 of my 20 minutes talking about our concerns for water quantity. We are on top of that.
Yeah.
I'd like to just add a really quick comment on that regard, which is I think we've spent a lot of time had a very steep learning curve in terms of getting everyone onto the same page in terms of water rights, in terms of understanding the water situation in this community. I think the whole community has, but one thing I think is really great is that this group has helped, I believe, create a little bit more of a codification of that knowledge and information, which I think is useful in the long term. But the thing that's come up most recently that I think links to what both Mike and Ronnie had mentioned and asked about is the idea of making sure water quantity is included in planning processes. Because right now that's not typical. What you have is, okay, yeah, there's a box checked off saying we have the infrastructure that's easy to hook up, but no one's ever gone back and gone, do we have the source? So I think that's something that's, I'm sure not the only place needing to think about this, but that's a slightly new bent on it that I think is maybe more important than whether or not you have this, that, or the other widget in your house to use less water. It's more that on the front end of planning that there's a little more thought to hang on. What is the water use implication of a development?
I would like to add that also includes the other end, the water that goes out in terms of stormwater.
Oh, of course. No, I wasn't excluding
I know you didn't, but I'd just like to add that when we're talking about planning, that
Yes.
there's water coming in and there's also water going out. Okay. Both of those need to be planned for.
I wanted the board to know that we read your recommendations and take them seriously. So I recognize that you guys have been recommending a water attorney, and we've been checking in. And I think remind me, is that RFQ out now, or it's about to go out? So that's an update on that. And then one of the other recommendations you had made to us was that the city council speak with the county about water resources with respect to density and build out. And I was just going to remind the council that that was a request we'd gotten from the board. So I consider that on our to-do list. I don't know if there's a natural opportunity for that, or if we need to create that as a separate meeting.
Well, it's definitely interesting. I was thinking about, in reviewing our administrative work plan from this year and kind of thinking about 2019, that I wonder if, like, you know how we have section 1 and section 2, and this year section 1 was housing. I'm wondering if water was section 2 last year, if it's gonna move up, and we're gonna, you know, with the hiring of the attorney and, like you said, digging deeper from the planning perspective, with respect to water carrying capacity, what that's gonna look like if that's where that falls on the administrative work plan for us for 2019.
I mean, for us as policymakers, having the numbers is absolutely imperative. I mean, we're making decisions tonight about density and growth, and it's really difficult to have the conversation with developers and community about water when, you know, right, I mean, even as you said earlier, that we have adequate supplies for where we are right now, and we're trying to look at 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and I mean, do we feel like
10 years from now, I don't see a problem in the next 10 years. It's farther down the road than that, but you need to start planning for that now. And Mark Stilson actually said that Moab doesn't need to worry about water for 10 years. And I smiled.
I've also heard Moab City doesn't need to worry about water because we could always just pull it from the Colorado.
Well, at this point in time, is Moab City interested in subsidizing development outside of our area? Because you have enough water rights for build-out.
Plus, the water rights Moab City holds are groundwater rights, and surface rights and groundwater rights are not necessarily, they can often be changed, but not always.
Yeah.
I thought about one point in time
the river's already over-allocated.
The name of the conference I did attend was Risky Business on the Colorado River.
Where you all watched the movie while you floated?
And it's true. However, the amount of water compared to we're talking 10,000 acre feet, and they're talking 1 million acre feet. Those are their concerns. The amount of water this community actually uses is small compared with the needs of California and Denver. Theoretically, that is a possibility that Moab City could join with Grand County and San Juan County and provide a municipal drinking water source out of the Colorado River. That water is probably available. And the question to you is, would you like to sell out your water rights that are cheap and inexpensive for the city of Moab so that other people can develop? Or should the developers of that other community be paying for their own development?
They're going to pay for their own development, trust me.
I'm curious, I mean, do you consider, because I think this council would like to have a better collaboration with Grand County, and so do you consider them others?
At this point in time, GWSSA has enough water to meet its near-range goals also. There's been some planning that has taken place. The 2 events that were taking place that didn't actually consider how we're going to get those resources if we actually go to that level of development. And
are we talking about the high density overlay?
High density overlay and the doubling of the number of houses on a lot, which effectively could double the size of the community. The land use, once again, we're back to land use and water resource planning. GWSSA, told them yes, we could provide the infrastructure to deal with the high density overlay, but they didn't tell them where they were going to get the water from. And I do believe that anybody who puts a straw in upgrading of Moab Springs has the potential to harm Moab City's water supply in terms of negatively impact Moab City's water supply. That doesn't mean we shouldn't work with them, or that we can't talk to them or figure out something that make it all work. We probably can. Their goals, and the city does indeed talk to the county on a regular basis, their goals are not necessarily, if you look at exactly how much water that would use, they're not out of the question in terms of how much the aquifer can support. Okay? But you're right, we need to continue talking with all the entities. the quote was, we need to be working with people honestly when we're talking about water rights. We need to know what they want, and we all need to be honest with each other if we're gonna arbitrate through all of this. And as long as we keep the doors open, and we speak honestly, or Moab City speaks honestly, that they are indeed planning on using their 10,000 acre feet of groundwater rights, and we let everybody know that, Moab City should be in fine shape, and other people should be able to deal with that, and we should let them know that.
I think Karen asked a good question, something we might want to put on our agenda at some point, is to get Dana Van Horn in here and get the word straight about the subject of potential collaboration with the city. In other words, would we share our water rights, or what are we going to do? That's a great question, actually. But I think we ought to, I mean, I could volunteer. I can tell you that the county has, as Arnie says, some room for growth, but they don't have as much headroom as we do. They've got something a little north of 2,000 acre feet, I think, per year. And that latest growth comes from a couple of wells, in particular right on the edge of the valley, that may be, and this is my opinion now, I could be wrong, benefiting from a leak from Ken's Lake. In other words, those wells are holding up very well, pumping a lot of water. But could be when the leaks to the lake are fixed, they won't look so good. So there's some cautionary points out there. So I'd like to get Dana in here to talk to us one-on-one. I think that'd be a great conversation.
Anything else from the council or Rosemary? Yeah?
Yeah, could you cue that up? So I think
I can talk while you go.
Yeah, please do. Well,
And just to give us 5 minutes before the other, so a couple more minutes?
Yeah.
I have one
Go ahead.
Can I just ask it right now, if you don't mind? The water board, our mission statement wasn't exactly as defined as I might have imagined it to be when the board was developed. With this annual report, are we meeting the expectations of what you thought we were supposed to be working on?
I would say I'm very pleased and satisfied. I don't know about anyone else.
I would agree.
Okay, but this is where we should, we pretty much work for you at this point in time. We're supposed to be representing the city, and I want to make sure we're meeting your needs.
I would agree with that. I'm pleased. And if you wanted to give us a work plan at the beginning of the year just for feedback, like looking forward, then that might increase confidence.
I would have to say exceeds expectations of a volunteer board.
Okay, so I just want to add one more comment. In addition to looking at Grand County and San Juan, I think we really need to look at how we use water within our own community. So the data analysis that I've been working on is the perception. Do all the hotels take up all our water, and who's using our water? So now, if you click it in about 2 slides, we have the breakdown of well, the first one was our water challenge and the economics behind it and the environmental benefits. But the next one was breaking out all our water use by sectors. So it gets to, are the hotels using all our water? And it's really only 16%. We looked at water losses for the city, and that's 6%. So to put it in perspective, usually nationally it could be as, about 10 to 12. So we're doing very well in terms of our own infrastructure. And then this is about acre feet. So this is about the city's water supply. So I tried to put it in perspective with some other arid tourist towns. And so basically what you could see is Moab has basically twice as much as some of our peer cities.
So as much available.
Right. And so Arnie was mentioning, we have all these tourists. So I was saying, okay, so what about St. George, or what about Albuquerque? How do we compare with them? So that's what this data is up there.
Wow, that's interesting.
How do we compare with Wasatch Front?
That I don't know.
Well, they have a lake.
I mean, they have this reputation of being awesome way back, Do we look even worse than them? I mean, that'd be really embarrassing.
This isn't a worse thing, this is supply, this isn't use.
Yeah.
This is supply, not use.
available.
Well, this is just the supply. Oh, this is just the supply.
not use.
Supply, yeah.
Thank you.
And then
So you
Does
got
that include the Colorado for us? It's a lot.
No.
I don't believe
No.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's per
Yeah.
person, so there's that potential per person. Part of that's because our population is small, but that does not, that's based on,
Oh,
on permanent residences,
I see.
not transient.
No, it has transients.
It
in
has
too.
transients in it too,
Yeah.
okay.
So and the other thing I just wanted to point out is all the outreach we've been doing with the businesses, they're very receptive to it. We do give them devices. We have a little kit that we go out to the hotels and restaurants they've been taking. We've probably distributed close to 200 of the door hangers, and people like them so much that they're stealing them. So now we're doing them in a different way. And so I brought some of the educational. Cara worked on a really great handout about watering that we have up and planning right now. And so people are very receptive to being on the bandwagon of conservation.
thank you.
Give you 3 minutes, not 5.
Yeah, unless we have any other questions, we should take a break and then resume at 7 o'clock for a regular meeting. But thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to the board and Mike for sitting on the board as well. 3 minutes.
Cool. I like that little program.
On the water. Give and take.
Okay. Is that a different program, different presentation? Yeah, I'd never seen it before. What's it called? Powtoon? Powtoon. And it, I think so. But it's just, it's like PowerPoint. Yeah.
At another time,
Arnie
she
was saying that.
she said this.
Oh,
Not that, but
Okay, yeah, Arnie tonight was talking about per capita and how misleading those numbers.
Yeah.
Again, we couldn't tell you how after then.
But then through some of the long presentations with council dialogue, I might do that picture-in-picture.
Yeah.
Have the council down there in resolution.
Okay, so it
Lisa's
doesn't.
gonna be watching the other end to this.
Looks okay. It seems like the button wasn't responding when I was trying to get out as well. And then it was just.
Just crazy things happen. I think they're getting swapped.
Yeah. It was funny though, what popped up, there was a little, not an error message, but a warning message that popped up and said, please return this copy of the city council chamber.
This is not your cut.
Right, and it doesn't go in the other room. All right.
All sorts of things happen. How are you, Tony?
What?
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
It's like fall, all of a sudden, like bang.
It got cold all of a sudden. I feel like we went from summer to early winter. Where was the fall?
Mike?
To 80 degrees.
Mike?
90 and that was 60.
All this chit chat. Galen, are you? Galen's quitting. You're done. Okay. It's 7. Let's, Karen, she's quitting too.
It's hurting cats.
Am I the sergeant of arms?
Deputize you.
Okay.
Karen, come now.
I got fired.
okay.
Okay. Call this meeting to order, 7 p.m., 7:01. Today's Tuesday, October 9th, 2018. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, section 1, approval of minutes. There are no minutes, so that was easy. I'm actually going to go last. Ronnie, will you start us with a council report? Thank you.
A lot of us went to some of the same things, so I will share some details on a few things and then leave it to the rest of you if you want to comment on some of these other things. Let's see, I went to a trail mix meeting today, just sharing some little tidbits that may be of interest to people. The Travel Council has a special events committee, and they meet to rehash on different events in the community, and they're just wondering if you happen to have feedback on Outer Bike, the Kokopelli 100, or the NICA High School Mountain Biking event that happened recently. You can contact Michelle Hill or email her at events@discovermoab.com. We've gotten some snow in the mountains, so probably at an end for some of the biking up there. There's apparently 10 inches at Geyser Pass, a foot at Burrow Pass. Sunday, the Highway 128 will be closed in the morning for a while for the half marathon in that Dewey Bridge to Sorrel River Ranch stretch. For you horseback riders or anybody else who wants to celebrate, the Courthouse Rock Campground Corral opening celebration is on Friday, 11 a.m. And let me just say thank you to the city. Anonymous Park is in the process of getting its bathroom installed. Saw it on the truck today. And on a happy note, a lot of people involved in the NICA mountain bike race for high schoolers just we're talking about how wonderful it was to talk to the students and parents, talking about just how mountain biking has changed so many of their lives in a positive way. So that's always great to hear from kids. Let's see, on the 2nd of October, we had a city-county training on lobbying. I also went that day to a county meeting on distribution of PILT, SRS, mineral lease funds, and some of the TRT funds because it affects 2 of the special service districts I sit on. So that was really interesting. But as I told the council, and probably just good for people in the audience to know, it reiterated the need for the city and county probably to get on the same page about understanding each other's budgets better and what the city can pay for and what the county can pay for and what we might be able to help each other pay for, but they aren't always one and the same thing. The mayor and Kaylin and I were on a panel for a League of Women Voters meeting yesterday, just kind of a town hall, and one of the things, there are a few issues that just came up over and over that are probably just interesting for people to hear. Still resident concerns and complaints about Razor UTV noise. A lot of people asking when we're going to hear about the downtown plan. It was my recollection that we were thinking that we'd hear about that in October. A lot of people who'd like to follow up on how their comments were integrated. And we did mention to people at that meeting and for everyone in the audience that the council towards the end of the year starts thinking about our priorities for the coming year, and it's very helpful to hear from people about what matters to them. And people at the meeting shared a whole list of things, which I will write up for you on the council, and I probably shouldn't take up time reading that whole list. Let's see, I did attend a community meeting on the recent ICE presence in the community and related to immigration issues organized by Margie Lopez-Reed at the Episcopal Church. Thanks to the police chief and the mayor for being on that panel. It was very informative. People can contact Margie Lopez-Reed for more information if you want to get on that mailing list. And I think we should probably just stop there. Although I will say, because I can never stop, but I've misplaced my pages for it, I did go to an EMS meeting yesterday, and call volume is at an all-time high for the year. And for those of you who may not have noticed, sometimes our calls at EMS are higher for residents than tourists, and sometimes it's vice versa, and we've made the shift again. So let's see, 146 calls in September, 55 of those for local patients, 75 for non-local. A lot more details, but I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Ronnie.
A number of us were at a meeting with Lincoln Schertz. He's a Utah Association Counties representative, together with County Council, and it was a very informative meeting. He did a great job, but it was kind of brutal, I thought, in that he reiterated how difficult it is for rural counties to make things change up at Salt Lake at the Capitol. And I was pleased to hear Evan Clapper, whom I hadn't really met before, Karen Morales and Melissa Bird introduced me to him a day or two ago, offer the same notions about changing TRT taxes, which is to change a magic 2/3 ratio from 2/3 to 1/3, and which basically means 3 billboards instead of 4, and then using that money for a wider range of tourist mitigation issues, which has been an idea that's been gaining support here for quite a long time. So I was pleased to hear that many of us are on the same page, and so it was disappointing to hear Lincoln say that Salt Lake County, I believe he said, is under audit, as are all the counties apparently in Utah, for misuse of TRT funds, possible misuse. And so he advised us not to try to tackle changing TRT this year. And at first I agreed with him, but I'm thinking he also told us how slow it is for things to happen up on the Capitol. So I'm kind of thinking we ought to throw our ideas out. If they don't go anywhere this year, it'll be easier the second time around. So there you go.
Thank you, Mike. Tawny?
I attended a meeting with the Faith-Based Coalition, and they are still concerned about their sewer rates, and I spoke with Emily and with Joel about those. Joel is working on a message about how we came to those rates, and hopefully some resolution with those folks. This was not a meeting. These were completely serendipitous. I have been in 3 different stores this week where people were very happy about the plastic bag ban, both proprietors and customers. And they didn't know who I was. I stayed incognito.
Thank you, Tawny.
I attended an airport board meeting, and the FAA has realigned our priorities as the airport board, and they have basically told us that we need to work on a taxiway that we thought we could potentially do 3 to 5 years from now, but it's actually going to start taking place immediately to allow the jets that we have coming into the airport. We've been granted a $5 million grant from the FAA to help complete this project, which is great news. I attended the Chamber of Commerce board meeting, and they have found a temporary location. They will start their move in November.
Where is that?
Mike Bynum has offered a space in his, I think it's above, Luann's here, downtown, upstairs.
Right behind Zach's?
Above, yes, is that where, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so they're looking at using that space, not as a permanent space, but temporarily. So they also asked if the city and the county would potentially be interested in having the Salt Lake Chamber come down in December for a workshop meeting to give a presentation on a study they commissioned, that the Salt Lake Chamber commissioned, to the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute on growth expectations in Utah and how we can plan for those changes. Some of us saw part of that presentation at the Utah Leagues of Cities and Towns, and they would just like to come down and address both councils if possible.
And were you thinking that was going to be December?
Yes,
And
Yes.
as part of a meeting, or?
Well, it was both, because they find it's easier to address both governments, and I don't know if we would be interested in doing a joint meeting, but it actually, when they're available, it falls on one of our December council meetings, so as a workshop agenda, potentially,
Okay.
would be
And we could just invite the county.
council to come.
And, okay.
Okay. Let's see here. I attended the reusable bag workshop with Roz Brain, super fun, in the Resiliency Hub. Made a couple sweet t-shirt bags, because I don't know how to sew, and you don't need to. Rosemary, Dr. Russo was also present, and we're interested in maybe presenting the t-shirt bag to the elementary school, because I've talked to the elementary school about educating children about the reusable bag issue. This was before our vote, and at the time they felt that it was a political issue, and so now I think we can broach it as a more environmental sustainability issue, which would be received a little easier, I believe. And then I also attended the Water Conservation Open House, and would encourage folks to fill out the survey to better help Department of Natural Resources understand what our priorities are as a local community. I think there's been information in the papers as to the link for that, but it's surveymonkey.com/r/local goals. And I spoke with Steve Jones, the principal engineer for Hanson, Allen, and Luce, who we have contracted in the past for water ideas, and we talked about the storage unit tank up by the cemetery. So I was just kind of curious where we were at with that, because I know that was on the council's agenda a couple of years ago before I was on here. So, and that's.
Is that a question?
Sure.
That sounded like a question. Yeah.
Well, the culinary water storage and distribution master plan will be in front of you at the next meeting for hopefully adoption. And then if that happens, that would give us the documentation we need to go forward with planning for that tank. And it would include hopefully getting some state assistance to fund it.
Yes, and he remarked that there was potential for funds, so that was good news. Okay, that's awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen.
I did not attend the Housing Task Force monthly meeting this month because it didn't happen, because too many of the people were at the APA Utah Fall Conference, so no progress there. Housing is still a crisis. The Dark Skies Committee has forwarded their recommendations for the outdoor lighting code to the respective planning commissions. So we're glad to have that piece of work behind us, and hopefully it'll be working its way through the process now. And that was about it for me this week.
Thanks, Kaylin. I went last because I couldn't find my cheat sheet. So I was honored to be asked to speak at the Pride Festival that happened on Saturday, and read a proclamation. And I want to just honor Mike and Ronnie for being there as well, and standing up and sharing what you did. That was a great event, and I was happy to be there the full day, and celebrating our diversity in our community. And then also, I was lucky enough to read another proclamation last night on the front lawn as we celebrated. We did an Indigenous Celebration Day, and the Native American Club and I got together and planned to have dinner. And we had candles and Navajo tacos and they brought up a hoop dancer who performed and spoke to Indigenous culture, and the theme was We Survive, reminding us that Native American culture is not past, but it is present. That was a lot of fun, and I was honored to read a proclamation there. Karen and I sat in on finance director interviews that happened this past week. Also went to the legislative lobbying session with Lincoln. That was really helpful for us planning for 2019. I also was invited by a teacher at the middle school to speak to a class, which was really great. And the next time I get asked, I may send that request to one of you as well. But it was great to, that was loud. It was great to talk to middle schoolers. It's humbling. You know, you really gotta make a lot of good jokes to get them to giggle. So, and then also today, finally today, I was lucky to be invited by Rick Bailey. There was a big meeting about communications and all things 911 and radio, and it's something we don't really think about. It's our safety nest and communications. And we've got some decisions moving forward and how we're, I don't like saying growing up, but how we're deciding to, you know, move from, I was calling it moving from like the landline to the cell phone, and in terms of communication. But I was grateful to be there at that meeting, and that was it for me. David?
Just a few things for you. Actually, Eve, do you want to jump in? And we got a couple things that Eve's going to talk about the forest plan and where we're at with community contributions.
Hello, I'll be really brief. I just want to let you know, as you know, we've been working on the new forest plan revision for over a year, and we're in a new stage that's looking for public input, and it's for the desired conditions. And the city has been working with Grand County and Castle Valley and San Juan County to present our desired conditions primarily as it relates to our watershed. So I can report that in the draft documents that are available now for public review, the portion of the forest that contains our watershed is proposed to be a special management area. So that's a positive. And the forest has received the city's desired conditions, which I sent to you all on Friday, I think. And as I look through all the documents that they're presenting for public review, I find most of the items, the ones about water conservation, are all in there. And I've communicated with the forest staff to find out where the other items that we care about exist, because I don't see them yet. But they're about things from our general plan, things about night sky, dark skies, and view shed, air quality, and ambient noise levels. So those, I don't see them yet, but they could appear when they get back to me and point it out. Do any of you have questions about the desired conditions that have been presented on behalf of you all? Okay, but we all have the opportunity to react as citizens, and the period opened yesterday and will go through, I think, November 9th, and it's on the Manti LaSalle Forest planning page, and if anybody needs help navigating to that page, they can contact me, because I tried Googling it numerous different ways and I couldn't ever get there. So I don't trust that the public will be able to just Google it, okay? The other thing that I just wanted to let you know about was the progress on the community contributions.
We have received 2 applications, and there will be several coming in this week. That's my anticipation. So
Because the deadline is
next Monday,
next Monday.
yes, the 15th. Eve, is that in addition to people who showed an interest in the spring, or these like crossover with some people in the spring who are just adding to their paperwork, or? Are you talking about the sponsorships, the replacement for the fee waiver program? No, I guess I was just thinking community contributions, only because, you know, I feel like there were probably at least 5 in the spring who were asking about this, so I didn't know if it was. Oh, yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. The people who previously asked, yes. Those are folks that I've heard from. Yeah. Questions?
Thanks, Eve.
Okay, thanks.
Just really one other thing. As part of our code compliance work, we've been engaged in some pretty extensive nuisance abatement work. And I just only flag it for you if you have questions about how it works or what the process is to get to the point where the city is engaged with actually removing items. I would just encourage you to contact me, and I can brief you more on it. It's a big step for us as a community, I think, and it's been a long time coming in some cases. But it is, you know, it is a big step, and so we're moving forward with it. It's been successful so far, and I just wanted you to know that it's happening. And if you have questions, please let me know. Other than that, the show goes on.
Thanks, David. Okay, then we are moving right along to section 4, citizens to be heard. We do have a public hearing coming up. I do have a couple of forms in front of me, neither of which to speak and are part of the public hearing. Are there any citizens to be heard tonight? Okay. Moving on, section 5, presentations. Student of the month for the middle school. Rachel Harrison, Willow Nichols, come on up. Why don't we come over here? You want to come on this side? Congratulations. Whereas the staff and faculty of Grand County Middle School on a monthly basis select a student of the month based on this for October 2018. Willow. Congratulations, both of you. It means a lot. And would anyone like to speak on behalf of these students? Anyone would like to share? Sometimes the middle school. I do have something here that, well, I'll be able to distribute, but congratulations, both of you. Thanks. Best part of the job. Okay, we're moving on to section 6, which is a public hearing. And we actually have 2 items. The first is 6.1, solicitation.
Is something we do every year. Usually it's a little bit later in the year, but we're doing it earlier this year. It's possible there may be another one at some point during the fiscal cycle, which goes, as you all know, from July through the end of June. So it's typically an opportunity to catch things that didn't about that. I think, Ron, in particular, you were asking questions, and I have a few copies of handouts for those of you who want. That's not unexpected. This chart shows the individual taxes, sales to here.
These are great.
Yeah, these are really helpful. This is again, sales and use taxes that we have, and these are the years, and they just show really to rely on that as opposed to a property tax here in the city. All right, which is really hotels and revenue coming from hotels and overnight rentals, overnight accommodations. It has the general fund operations budget in there in the green. And then we have two many people actually come to town necessarily yet.
And David, just to interject, that is just the percentage increase or decrease.
Right.
From 2011?
From the previous
From the
years.
previous
From the
year.
previous year?
Right.
Yes.
Oh, so because we had such a big bump in 2016, 2017, we actually didn't have, we had a negative percentage increase. Is that, am I reading it correctly? Are we not done yet, or?
No, you're right, but it probably had, for arches, the blue one that's down there, if I can point to it, you're talking about this little nub right there?
Yeah.
Probably attributable to the road construction in the park as much as anything, and the limited hours there was a limitation on hours for access to the park.
So it was a decrease over the previous year, but I would say that the trend of visitation at Arches is an overall upward
Oh, yeah.
amended. They just put in another number, and it was very difficult to wade down through all the text and locate the type of use that you wanted to review. It consolidates similar uses into a single use, and this is a really easy example that I use. It was animal pound or kennel and veterinary clinic were changed to just veterinary clinic. Changed all the daycare terminology in the code. You can see we had child daycare centers, and in reality, daycare can be extended to far beyond children. And large commercial and home-based daycare centers to just daycare. It simplified the standards in the residential areas to encourage the use and eliminated standards in some commercial zones. Removed daycare standards in the C3 and C4. Simplified standards for group homes and added appropriate occupancy numbers based on the zone. We changed churches to places of worship to actually open that up to a broader context of different religions. It allows accessory dwelling units to be constructed that are smaller than 500 square feet in area. Removes the term lodging, less than 10 units from the C2, and to make it more of a residential transition zone. And replace the term family with household. In a nutshell, that's where we are.
How many meetings did we have collaboratively, this council and you, from the planning department?
2,000.
No.
I didn't ask for hours. I asked for number of meetings.
That was number.
Workshops. In workshops alone, or would you include?
Yeah, how many workshops did we hold? At least 4. I think there were 3 for residential, 2 for commercial.
Right.
Yeah, so total of 5.
I think we had a couple of workshops before regular council meetings also, so
Yep.
there were a couple in there.
Yep, we had a couple before. Each of those meetings was at least 2 hours. Some went more. Just not to put too fine a point on the fact that this council is incredibly familiar with the changes that were made because we made them in collaboration, but also in receiving from the planning commission these suggestions and going through one by one to make sure that we were comfortable with it all. Lots of thought and effort into this amendment. I also wanted to point out that this is Ordinance 2018-01. And it is October. So it shows that we also put, that we gave ourselves plenty of time to move through this as well.
If it helps, the original date that you saw was in April. April 24th, I believe, was the first time it came to City Council.
April. Oh, because it first went to Planning Commission as the first ordinance of the year. Okay, anything else to share?
Only if there's questions.
I kind of thought the purpose of this is public hearing, so we'd be
It is.
hearing from people, and then I didn't know if you, wanted to deal with things that we had to say tonight, or if you wanted to deal with that 2 weeks from now when we vote. 'Cause that's usually up
It's
to
our
the mayor.
public hearing, so why don't we get on to that, and we'll definitely have deliberation on the response from the community. Thank you both. Okay, I'll now open the public hearing. Solicitation of public input on proposed ordinance 2018-01 and ordinance amending various sections of the Moab Municipal Code. I do have 3 comment forms. So first, Bob Greenberg, you're up. And I do want to point out that I do enforce the time limit. So,
Which is what?
The comment form says 2 minutes, so you'll be notified at 2 minutes.
Great, starting now.
Yes.
First of all, I think it's a fabulous effort. Changing the conditional uses which have been problematical at city and county to allowed uses with definitions, great idea. Removing B&Bs from R1 and R2, fabulous. The example that Jeff gave us, though, about the terminology, what happened to the cats?
The cats?
Yeah, kennels.
They get to roam free.
I see. But what I did want to say is that I think still I have some issues with it. As you all may know, I live at the east end of Center Street under the shadow of the high-rise center of southeastern Utah. In particular, we have an old hotel that was moved in behind us. I'm very concerned about the change from family to household, primarily because household is nowhere defined that I could find. There is a definition on page 67, but I believe it only applies to 1731.020, the RC zone. It doesn't appear in the definitions themselves. That concerns me a lot. It should concern you, because in an R1 or R2 zone, a hotel could move in next door to you, which would then be permitted by this regulation. It's a massive document. I didn't attend the workshops, so in order for a civilian to really review it, I think a red line version would be called for. And I would just beg you to make that available during the next 2 weeks so we can submit written comments that make a little bit more sense. Thank you.
Nice work.
Dramatic. And we are listening, so thank you for that comment. Jim Englebright. Thanks. Welcome.
Well, my name is Jim Englebright, and I live on 780 Hillside Drive, which is really 780 East, 200 Second South. And so in our neighborhood, we have 11 homes, 4 of which now have become bunkhouses. Now, bunkhouses isn't talked about anywhere in this document, but bunkhouses are, by my definition anyway, where you have employers buying a house and allowing employees to live in this home, whether it's how it's occupied. So, as Mr. Greenwood stated, I'd really like to see some definition of household in there. So that really concerns me. Now, we have these, and here's what I see on my street. And we have some knowledge now because we've been living with this for some time. Most of those houses will have 6-day cars parked around them every night. Now, most of them are on city parking, and 2 of these are on corner lots, so they easily hold 6 cars. But it's not well defined. The other thing that's happening is almost all these residents, the property has gone downhill. Weeds in the yard, parking on the front lawns, garbage that's spilled over, all kinds of issues going on here with this kind of thing. Not that we understand that there's a need for long-term housing here, and I believe these homes are different than what we call long-term rentals. Definitely just by definition of an employer buying for these people. There's no definition. You could have 1 person or 100 person in these houses. Also, there's no, if you look under the proposal here, there's no clear outline for what's required for parking, maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. When I've gone to the city to talk to them about them, they say, here is a form. You fill this form out, a complaint form, and you will have this opportunity. Then we'll take that and take that as a complaint. That sort of puts neighbor against neighbor. Now, it'd be well for all of us to get this defined better, and so we know what we're talking about, and that can go. So, anyway.
Thank you.
Is my 2 minutes up? Did I hear a ding?
Yes, that was a ding, but
Emily,
Part of it in there.
thank you, Jim.
can we take a minute to confirm for people this whole question about household? Because in the packet, I can see the definition of household being on page 67.
Hold on just 1 second.
Yeah.
Thank you. We can,
it might be confusing to other people who are commenting.
do you want to go ahead and finish what you were saying? I'm sorry.
I was just wondering if we could, for other people who are going to come up and speak, if we can just settle that point of confusion right now. Because we have a definition of household in the packet on page 67, and the way the pages are laid out, I can see that it might appear to people that that definition for household is only for the RC zone.
Do you have it pulled up? Can you read it?
I can read it for you.
Thank you, Chris.
Chris can read it, but I just wanted to clarify in the agenda summary, it seems to be clear that the intention of the proposed changes is to change that for everything, not just the RC for all zones. So I just wanted to have staff confirm that, and Chris can read it too, but just so people know and they don't have to use up their 2 minutes.
One of the things I was just talking with David about was to make clear that there are a number of definitions that were changed in this ordinance, or that were added, and those will be codified in the general definitions in Title 17 in, I think we decided it would be 1706-020. In other words, they're meant to apply throughout. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and so the language, that language of the term household was included in those changes, and it means one or more persons related or unrelated who live in the same dwelling and share meals or living accommodations and may consist of a single family or some other grouping of people.
Thank you, Chris. So that's why we're having a public hearing. So Vicki Webster. No worries. Vicki Webster, you're up to speak, and we are definitely listening. I just want to say we are listening.
Can't start the timer yet because mine might take 2.5 minutes.
No worries.
And I'll give you this one. My name is Vicki Webster, and I live on Hillside Drive right across the street from Jim on the east side of town. And you've all heard from me in numerous letters and emails over the last year or so about the issue of the company bunkhouses and the very negative impact that they have had in our neighborhood. Most of what I have to say to you is in those letters and emails, and I urge you to read those carefully. Please call me and have a conversation because this is complicated. There's a lot to say that takes more than 2 minutes. This evening, I'll just try to drive home 2 critical points. One, company bunkhouses are not the same as other long-term rentals. They are a commercial intrusion into the neighborhood. They are an extension of the business's commercial campus into a residential neighborhood, and they are used for commercial purposes. The businesses park their commercial vehicles and store commercial equipment on the property. And the bottom line is that the business's bottom line is more important to them than abiding by the ordinances that require them to maintain the property. As a result, and as I have documented for you previously, we have the landscaping is allowed to dye the garbage piles up, and at times they cram so many occupants into the home that the number of vehicles outnumbers the available parking spaces. There are 3 of these bunkhouses clustered together at one end of our street, so to alleviate the overcrowding and parking problem, one possible solution, you could restrict the number of bunkhouses per so many hundred feet in much the same way that we used to restrict the number of B&Bs in those neighborhoods. The problems with landscaping and garbage, however, require a different solution. I know your response to that is that code compliance is complaint-driven, and we must sign our names to a public document before the city will address the violations. This brings me to the second point. Can I finish?
Yes.
I would like to stress tonight we are a small town in which we are quite interdependent with our neighbors. Requiring us to put our name on a formal complaint in order to have the city enforce its code is simply poor public policy. It is unacceptable to me that the city refuses to address code violations of which it is well aware. A violation is a violation no matter how it is reported. Finally, I would just like to say that I believe there is a middle ground, a win-win solution. If we must have these company bunkhouses in our R2 neighborhoods, please at least regulate them and prevent them from negatively impacting the character of our otherwise very lovely neighborhood. They've already proven to us that they won't do that on their own. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Judy Powers.
I have to say a lot of this looks really good. I'm really excited, and I am really concerned about this whole thing. My deal is neighborhoods. We're losing our neighborhoods. I'm so concerned about that. I'm thrilled we're getting the B&Bs out of there. But I agree. I think this man camp thing, this bunkhouse thing, it's not, I understand, I think, why we changed it from family to household. Everybody doesn't have to be related, but nobody's in charge. There's nobody there to take responsibility. They come and go. These are not people that are there long-term. They may be renting it long-term, but these people are coming and going. So it's just as bad as a B&B, and it might even be worse because at least in a B&B, they want it to look good. They don't have as many people there. There's more people there. And I just feel like we have such limited neighborhoods, and R2, I mean, R3 go for it, R4 go for it, whatever, but you know, you've got R2s, and with the whole impact of all the B&Bs and the Airbnbs, which are still not in control, and the razors going through all these neighborhoods because this is what's happening. I think you want to protect some of your neighborhoods. It's nice to know your neighbors. That's why we live here. We want to know who our neighbors are, and these are not places where you're going to know your neighbor. These are people that are coming in for whatever those different programs are and all that stuff. These are not people that are living there. Again, I'm sure the parking is a problem, but my thing is there's nobody in charge. It's not a neighborhood. It's not somebody you can go over to and say, yeah, you need to take care of your yard. So usually, even I have a lot of long-term rentals. I refuse to do them as Airbnbs, and somebody's responsible for that. And that's what I'm saying. I think this would be worse than the B&Bs.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Judy. There's another one. I just want to reiterate, we're not responding because we're in public hearing, but we're definitely listening. Joel? I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Verl. Oh, I'm sorry, Verl, come on up. What's your last name? Packard. Thank you.
I wrote on me, sorry.
Oh. No problem. Thank you. Okay. Will you pull the microphone over, please? Thank you.
I would ask Mr. McEnany to read that resolve about the family again and listen to it. And that states basically to me, nothing. Nothing. Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It means one or more persons related or unrelated who live in the same dwelling or share meals and living accommodations and may consist of a single family or some other group of people.
If that says nothing to me, then I'm sure that says nothing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So I'm out of forms, but last chance if anybody else. Okay. I'm ready. I suppose that's an I wish to speak form.
Yeah.
Thank you. State your name.
My name is Ann Northrup. This is my 5th year at this, and I know everybody in this place knows why I'm here. Number 1, our 2 residents need to protect the people that live in it. As a single family home, if I wanted to put a renter in my basement, I could. That's great. But when you have individuals that are parking all up in one area, and then all of a sudden they go, oh, let's go down on Opal and park. So it looks like there's maybe 2 or 3 cars in front of that house when there's actually 8 or 9. So you can see it spreads in a different way than all I'm saying is your code enforcing is not doing an adequate enough job. When you report something, you put your name on it, and if that person is more than willing to go in and see what you've done, causes an impact on me and the individual that I am complaining about. I don't feel that you guys are doing that quick enough or responsible enough. Now, the GGBY starts next month, and if I have it again like I've had, I don't think you guys are being fair to anybody in that neighborhood. Now, if I have to get Rick and Cindy out, they're willing to come, the Hirschfields. I have neighbors that are behind me 100%. Do I need to sign a petition to move this out so I don't have people walking by my house at midnight, all hours of the night, you know, lights going on, cars coming in and out? It's horrible. And this is it. This is number 5. And I've been coming and coming and coming. I feel that you are being unjust to the people of this community that have paid taxes for 35, 40 years and are not taking care of our neighborhoods, okay?
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Any further comments? Okay. Motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Thanks, Kaylin.
Second.
Thanks, Tawny. Any discussion? All those in favor?
It's closing the public hearing.
Yes, closing the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you for the courage to come and speak. It means a lot. And we are listening. And we are now in section 7. So we'll move right along to special events, vendors, and beer licenses. 7-1 Electric Light Parade to be held on Saturday, December 1st, 2018. Approval of fee waivers not to exceed $10,059.80. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve. Fees be waived for the Electric Light Parade not to exceed $10,059.80.
Thanks, Ronnie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Karen. Discussion.
I think it's a great annual community event. It's unfortunate that obviously events on Main Street are expensive, but I think it also behooves us as a community to invest in events, celebrations that really celebrate our whole community and let people come out and enjoy themselves and express themselves. And I think this is a very good investment for the city.
And I want to point out too that while we have community contributions, that this falls prior to the end date for them to be able to apply for the contribution. So this is still this year, and they're not eligible for the contributions to be in that pool, but they would be required to apply for next year.
And that application process will happen in January?
November through February.
Oh, okay.
November through February? Yeah, because they're an event.
Special event, lots of sponsor, yeah.
Okay. Yeah?
So given that this is a joint effort of the city and the chamber, I'm wondering if the city should, if it would be appropriate for the city to budget for it directly, the way we do like our joint sponsorship over the 4th of July fireworks.
That's a good point.
Intriguing.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
Or in essence, waiving our own fee.
Right, so I mean, if you're going to be as transparent as possible, what you would do is you would budget the money specifically for the event, and then you would essentially, the city would pay itself for things like the extra staff time and supplies and that kind of thing, which is fine. That's a way a lot of places do it.
What are the other events besides 4th of July where we do that?
This is really the only other one I can think of off the top of my head that's like clearly identified as like a city thing that the city government is.
Yeah, I'm just worried.
Making happen.
Like we're setting a limited pool of money for other groups to draw from for other groups to sponsor events, and so it seems a little funny to then take from it for something that the city is a direct recipient of.
And then would we need to put that in our budget?
Yeah, for
amendment?
the next fiscal year we would, yeah.
So, for next fiscal year, wouldn't be a part of this.
Right.
Okay,
Because this year you're just waiving it, so.
That's good. But in terms of fee waiver, so let's remember to have that conversation during the budget.
Okay, well, we can talk about it in 2 weeks too.
In 2 weeks.
We're having a budget opening. We could just, but either way.
Blow it open. Yeah, okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
I will note that.
Any other discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay, section 8, we're in old business. The revision, 8.1, revision of city parks policies. David?
Yes.
You'll go ahead and pull it up for us.
Yes.
So we got through in workshop a good portion of our parks policies. This is a follow-up to be able for us to get through the final stuff.
We may not get all the way through, but figured you'd want to keep seeing this on a periodic basis until we did.
Rachel, can you give us a 20-minute limit? If nothing else, we'll know when it's 20 minutes later.
Very valid point.
And David, I was going to point out, we had that note start here next meeting, but I think because of some input from the public, there probably are some new comments that, you know,
So do you want to go
came on
back?
above that. Well, I'm just letting people know, I noticed when I was going through it that there are probably some that are newer. Like just above that, you can see, you know, Karen has one from October 5th. So I'm just wondering, I don't know what the most efficient way to do it is, but.
Let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
And
okay.
Since there's just a few.
Let me amplify that.
So David, cut this, some events. Oh, sorry.
Put a what?
Scrolling.
Oh, right, yeah, so that special events must allow, I mean, that's
standing there,
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just
And
gonna
then,
cut that.
do we want to add a cat clause? Karen?
That is just confirming what is in our code, actually, but we don't have to have it in there. Free the cats.
It just seems odd to me to allow, to state licensed cats are
It
allowed
is
to roam.
weird, I'm guessing that it's in there so that people don't call animal control if there are cats in the park. Does that make any sense? I mean, if dogs can't be loose but cats are, then.
Because the idea is not somebody bringing their cat to the park, it's that you live by the park and the cat roams.
Right.
I don't care if it stays in there. We won't talk about the unlicensed deer and skunk, but yeah.
I don't care.
Just scrap it. It's
Yeah.
gonna open up, that's where the cat claws.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Oh, I didn't get that.
Yes, you did
Good, no.
Good one.
Needed
But-
the visual.
But we're resolved.
So what are we doing? Are we keeping it or leaving it?
Oh, I thought we were okay to.
I would,
away.
I'd get it, I'd ditch it.
Yeah. Okay.
Look it up.
Ronnie said
I
keep
don't
it.
like a cat.
I feel it leaves levity for whoever has to read this every 5 years. But, you know.
Yeah. Levity is our theme tonight.
How about a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
I think we're.
Take it out.
Take it.
I don't care.
I think anybody's saying keep it in. We're good. Thank you for right?
No, I don't know.
I personally don't care.
2 against, 1
I vote for taking
taking it out. 3, that's a majority, okay. There we go. Problem solved.
What is table 1?
Oh, it's a new table.
It's a new
Thank you.
table.
It's a nice table.
Thank you. Okay.
Per request.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yes.
I can't read. Okay, code check.
Yeah, we took care of that, so we
Thank
have
you.
some replies in there. Parks, blah, blah, blah. Written permission.
Okay.
Carmela just had some concerns that I think you all actually have worked through with regard to the dogs at
yes.
Lions, although there was, I think somebody else made another note about whether that should be, while we're here, whether dogs should be allowed on the apron around the climbing structure, right? Wouldn't that?
Yeah, I feel like last time somebody suggested that maybe that wasn't, they just should be kept off of that, both because of the porous nature of it. It could be hard to pick up after a dog, but I mean, obviously, for any dog owners, at least in the summer, I mean, you probably know pavement gets hot too, but I mean, that stuff can get really hot, so maybe it's just a hard surface to pick up on.
And harder to oversee. I would say make it simple. Dogs on leash at Lions Park, not specify where. But are we there? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, only mentioned it came up at our last meeting, so I didn't know if it was
Would it
resolved.
be that difficult to have a sign, no dogs on the bouldering, in the bouldering area? I mean, that seems, dogs would typically like to lift a leg on the rocks and.
Oh,
point.
okay.
Just.
Okay, so somewhere in here.
When we get to the, that would be here. Dogs.
They can't just be in the rock climbing
They
area.
can't boulder.
No
They
bouldering.
can't boulder.
No pets allowed to boulder. Unless it's.
Except for that dog who was at the Banff Mountain Festival a few years ago. He was
Also, David
good at
Olson
bouldering.
has a dog that was a trick dog.
Oh, that's right.
Which I would allow that.
Okay, just making a note there. So we come to the table. Here it is. A couple comments about that, it looked like.
Nice table. Fair.
Nice table.
Oh, yeah, we got the question if it was easier to just label that column dogs, dogs allowed, whatever. And then as you went down to like Lions Park, you could say yes, on leash. On the Parkway, you could say yes, on leash. On the Bark Park, you could say yes, on or off leash. I mean.
Okay.
Is there any place where you, as a council, feel like they can be off leash other than the Bark Park?
No.
Okay, well then, yeah, then we can just do that then. So yes at Lions Park, yes at the Parkway system, and yes at the Bark Park, and you can say on the Bark Park, on and off leash.
Yes. Okay.
Thanks, David.
Sure.
There are comments to the right.
Yeah.
So does that clear up?
Well, so I think Mike had a question about the table. Do we need a column for special events? And I then likewise added a question, do we need a column to clarify the amplification restrictions? Because as I was reading through, I started to get confused. Who needed approval for amplification? Yeah, and who didn't?
Special events, I mean, they're allowed I think everywhere, right? Where we landed on that, it's just it has to go through the special events process.
That was my question. I wasn't sure it was everywhere.
Yeah. I believe as we had talked about it, yes. I mean, maybe, I don't know if the Mill Creek Parkway, well, I could see that actually happening if the Youth Garden Project was doing something. They want part of the Parkway for a second to have something.
I think we have written in the section on the Parkway that it's not generally, but you can contact the city about it. And then I can't remember what we said about the Bark Park. It'll be in the other part of the document, but I mean, maybe there's somebody someday who wants to have an event there. I don't know.
I would say that we would almost want to leave that regulation in the special events permitting document and not in the park policies. The amplification. But I don't know. I think that's me.
I'll get back to you on that one. I'm not sure.
Is it amplification for special events or otherwise? So just a general amplification?
Amplification of sound, so either, amplifying speech or music.
Well, what about the actual music in Rotary? That would probably...
That's not amplified, like with a, we're
right.
talking speakers,
got it. Yes, yes. So that
electronics.
It's like a flute.
You have to plug it in. That's
fine,
acoustic.
But like a plugged-in flute. Okay, so adding amplification boundaries in this part.
Okay.
How about just saying amplified music or speech? To me, that's easier to read, because just to say amplification is
well, I think
so nebulous to me.
I think the suggestion we got later from a resident was amplification with, what was it, music or...
I think it was just amplified sound. Whether it was music or speaking or...
Okay.
Or maybe that's an even better term, Tony, so yeah.
So where is amplified sound not allowed?
Well, historically it wasn't allowed at Rotary. I think when we went through the code, people wanted to allow it there. Some people did because of the amphitheater, but historically, I think it wasn't everywhere. I don't, I guess it's a question again. Are you going to allow stuff at the Bark Park? Would you amplify stuff there?
I mean, if someone wanted to rock out on an electric guitar, got a special permit.
So amplification would only be allowed with a special permit? Is that what we're saying? No? Yeah, no?
No, I think...
I'm honestly drawing a blank on that, whether there's a sort of an expedited special short process to go through if people are having a private event and they want to have amplification. I feel like that, I'm not sure yet what the answer is there.
Yeah, because frankly, I don't know that if we allow it anywhere without some kind of permit, whether it's special event or if it's, what used to be council approval is now city manager approval for Old City Park.
Right.
So how about this? Question number one. Does this council want to allow for amplified music without a special event permit or a permit?
I think you should need a permit.
You should need a
They're
permit.
public parks.
That's one.
I mean,
That's two. Three. Yep. And do you need a permit? Or like Farmers Market, I know that's what you're thinking. Farmers Market could in their permit say there's going to be some amplified music.
They do
so
that.
Would be.
But they go through the special event process, right?
Right. Yeah, so you'd be fine with the
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I drive the station, I play, you know, we have little amps all the time, so you can be heard from here to the wall over there. It seems like a permit is a little out of bounds for something that's that local. And then there's giant bands that can blow up the whole neighborhood. And for those, yeah, so it's,
Well, and I'm sure it's an enforcement too. Like if you're having a poetry reading and somebody's got a little microphone and amplification, I'm not sure that they're gonna call you. But you're
I'll tell
right.
them to go see you, okay?
The what?
If they come and get me, I'll tell them to go see you. Okay?
Yeah, right. She said it was fine.
I just feel like if it's big enough, it needs to be loud enough that you need amplification, then you probably need a permit.
Oh, I don't agree.
But I mean, to that point though, because we do have neighbors who are sensitive to this. I mean, I've seen Mike's little amps. I mean, would we allow that? Or are we opening ourselves up to neighbors being upset about that?
Well, we could have a threshold, so amplification larger than blah needs a special permit.
And then we talked about that before, that amplification, that amps level. I mean, do we want to be that specific?
That's hard. It's hard for enforcement.
So what are the issues in demand that we're bumping up against? I mean, it seems like now people who want to have amplified music are steered towards Old City Park.
Well, they're steered to getting a permit.
At Old City Park or elsewhere?
Elsewhere, I mean, if you had a special event, I mean, people have events all the time at Swanee or when we've had some of the events at Lions Park, I'm sure there were permits for that.
Right, but they're handled by the special event process,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah. But then it seems like people who are having like more personal gatherings.
Like an event under 50 people. Or what's our threshold? 50 or 100?
Well, I don't.
Says it in the park policy.
It's like a wedding. Yeah, it's like a wedding or birthday parties.
So if they want amplified music, do they tend to end up at Old City Park because that's where we more formally allow that?
I believe historically, yes, that you did not, the city did not permit amplified sound at Rotary, for instance, which is, typically where people are going to go to reserve a pavilion or whatever for a party other than Old City Park. So this is opening up the potential for amplified sound, probably via a permitting process that would then happen at both Rotary and Old City Park and potentially other sites as well. Lions Park, and again, separate from the special events process, really for private parties. But if I remember right, the idea was back in the day that people were having a birthday party, and it was kind of a spontaneous thing, and they'd bust out big speakers, and all of a sudden it was super loud and really affecting people. And so this was the city council's way to really try to bring some order to that issue, which it did.
So how about if we add Lions Park, since that doesn't have the residential adjacency?
Yeah.
And see if that.
So you don't need you don't need a permit to have amplified music at an event that you don't have a special event permit at Lions.
That makes sense. So
Yeah.
it could say.
I don't know how to say that.
Only with special event.
No, you could have it like if you have,
a
special event permit threshold is 100 people, correct? Is it 50 or 100? I don't know.
I think it was 50.
Is the cap 50? I thought we talked about changing the cap. 50, all right. So if you have people under 50, like poets, that want to have a microphone, you can do it at Lions. You don't need a permit. You can have some amplification. You don't need a special event. And then that's going to encourage that use at Lions, which is part of our goal too.
Okay, what about our Hopi dancer yesterday?
Well, that was
He had
different.
amplification.
It was the front lawn, so it's different. But yeah, that's true. Well, we don't even have that as a park or area.
Okay.
But I will say, if somebody wanted to have a special event and they wanted to have 50 or 75 people having an annual tree hug or something on the cool cottonwood right there, we would totally figure out a way to permit that.
I don't think it's a cotton.
Is it not a cottonwood?
Not a cottonwood.
What is it?
I think
Let's all pause and check.
The big
tree.
tree.
Hackberry. I think it's a hackberry.
Okay. Well.
Where's Cara? Dang.
Get your facts.
Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Hugberry.
Is there a call them for tree hugging.
What are we doing? Where are we here?
So where do we want to allow the amplified sound for private events through expedited permitting process as opposed to the special events? Or where do you not want it?
Are we saying
There was the idea at Lions Park is if you had enough people to trigger a special event, and if you had a big party, then you'd still need a permit? Okay.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a big party,
So Lions,
do we
I'd
care
say
if,
Old City
if
Park.
somebody amplifies music at Lions? Do we care if they have a permit?
If it's under a certain amount of people, no.
Okay.
And then Old City Park, I wouldn't care. I don't know what you guys.
Old City Park.
Okay.
Outsourcing it to the county.
What's that?
Outsourcing it to the
Yeah.
county.
Yeah,
They're far enough away from residential.
Jim, sort of. That's, I mean.
BMX
BMX Park?
is close to residential, closer than Lions. Sun Court would be a possibility. I'd say Sun Court is a great option. Yep, that's good. What do you think? Everybody, yes?
Yes,
Like,
good
yes,
there.
okay. So it's, and maybe you could specify in the label that it's for events that don't fall under the special event criteria.
Yeah, I will do an asterisk for that.
Yeah.
And presumably under the bounds of the noise ordinance.
Yes.
What, and then go down, what's the last one?
Ball fields.
Ball fields.
It's close to homes, no.
That would be a no. Okay. Moving on.
Although, I don't know if it's worth noting, we actually do is there amplified sound there as part of the, like, ability to announce the games?
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just making that up.
That's like a special allowance for city recreation, or?
Special dispensation, all right. That there. Anything else? But that's
Special event
through
permit.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think you have to write no on all of them.
Okay.
You didn't do that for
Oh.
leash. Okay, anything else, or can we move on from this table? Cool, moving on. For Carmella.
I just added Sun Court to the list of parks that have reservable areas or areas that have reservable areas.
Yep, okay.
So moving right along.
So we got a bunch of suggestions from Christy Kelvin, which I thought were all good. And one of them was just changing our references to amplified music to amplification with music or PA system in the background, just because it's not always music.
You think would amplified sound work?
Amplified sound will work.
Yes, because it's talking or singing or playing, musicking.
Busking.
Grunting.
Did you say busking?
Busking.
Yeah. What did you say?
Grunting.
Grunting. Amplified grunting.
And humming.
We're gonna do that after this meeting.
All right, I'll fix that later. So that, this was the next comment.
Because, which park was this? Remind me. Oh, this is Old City Park. Yeah, so Christy raised a question, which I thought was a valid question. Do you want to start time on amplification in here? I mean, if you're going to say it has to end by 9 p.m., do you want to say, starting at 9 a.m., just so someone's not out there, doing it at 3 a.m. or,
Do we care, has there ever been a, complaint about starting music too early at Old City Park?
Well, the only other thing I want to.
At 9?
The only other thing I'd like to point out here is that I think we all agree that Swanee is, there's headings that say it's critical because the neighbors are close. So if you want to put it, unusual restrictions on starting and ending times for amplified sound for Swanee, that's fine with me. But I'm a little leery about putting those, those extra restrictions on all the other parks as well.
I don't have a problem with it being as it is for Old City. Anybody else?
That's fine.
Swanee, you want to plead your case, or are we going to resolve this?
I mean, I guess we can wait and see if anybody out there complains.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they can comment. Okay, resolved for now. Oh, are we going to do a public hearing on this? Yeah.
It's up to you.
Okay. Rotary Park, okay.
So this had to do with some of the specifics of concerns around Swanee and Rotary. So Christy just had some suggested language that's down in there at the bottom. Because of their proximity to residential neighborhoods or any amplification, music or will only be allowed between the hours of 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. at both Swanee and Rotary. All other parks may have sound permitted between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. at the discretion of city staff.
That would eliminate movies in the park.
Oh.
It would eliminate the concert series, most likely. And anything else that happened in the summer before dusk, you know, in the slightly cooler.
What are the movie hours we've been doing?
They go till 10.
Start like
yeah,
at
10-ish.
They start like at 8:30.
Yeah, when it's dark.
They start when it's dark, yeah. And then it's a good 2 hours, movie length.
But do they have to be at those two parks?
Gosh, it's been so great. And we've had so many positive comments about having the movies at Rotary and Swanee. So
Is
I'd
that
be hesitant to remove that.
consistent with our noise ordinance?
I would say yes, at least, I haven't experienced the free concert series myself, but certainly with the movies, it's not very loud. I mean, it's not, then the way they've got the screen oriented at Swanee at least, the screen, you're facing the screen when you're facing south, so the screen and the amplification is headed across the park, if that makes sense. So, we haven't had any complaints about that I'm aware of.
I did get feedback during the concert series about the ending time and the desire for it to be later when it was cooler.
Yeah, yeah, there's
quite a lot of support for that.
Amplified voice in that realm. No pun
Did they have a
intended.
permit?
Oh, tricky. All right, well, let's just chew it one piece at a time. So, Rotary. Sound is not delineated. Do we want to delineate sound? Is that a question?
Well, the other piece of this is that this is all specific to the special events.
Oh, it is?
At least the suggestions are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be something we would want to probably codify in a different way than this document, but I mean, you can certainly have that discussion now too.
So you're saying, wait, so if we scroll up, we're under this specific park, no, we're in park policies.
Specific park policies.
Specific to each park.
And not specifically special events.
Right, what sounds like what Christy's suggesting is an overall set of guidelines for the special event permitting folks around amplified sound.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, can't we leave that up to city staff, the time they just apply?
Well, I think that, and she's suggesting that, but I think with a little more detailed direction from the council is how I'm reading
Well, I think the idea is that Swanee and Rotary are much closer to residents, and so it would be nice for them as residents to know that they can expect it to be quiet, or, you know, they're not going to be hearing speakers after a certain hour or before a certain hour.
Yeah, Swanee in particular, Rotary Park maybe a little, rest of them not big too. I mean, that's, and I would think City Carmela would allow for just those kinds of things when an applicant comes in.
But I don't think that the special concert series or the movies they're not going till 10 o'clock, are they?
Yeah.
The movies will, yeah, well, you're right.
And amplified,
But the concert is
supported by a lot of people, so it's kind of a balance here.
And I haven't heard any complaint about either the movie or the concert series.
Amplified music, dawn to dusk, unless part of a special event permit, and then the staff has the discretion to approve that exception. How about that?
I think that sounds, yeah, that seems fair.
So if we're saying amplified, dawn to dusk, unless.
Clarify what you mean. So you can have amplification dawn to dusk, like at 5:30 if the sun comes up?
Yeah, so, so in general, louder can be from dawn to dusk.
Well, don't you think 7, not
I
5?
thought that
Not
we had
dusk?
no, dawn in the summer is 5 o'clock.
It's early.
Oh, right, because then people are setting up and then there's.
We had this discussion about setting up too early and bullhorns and.
For races.
Yeah.
Right.
I think 7 to 9 seems fair unless special event, and it, like you said, it goes to staff.
Yeah.
7 to 9, yeah, okay, so 7 to 9 unless given special permission during administrative review of a special event permit.
Right, so basically, if you, the specified hours are 7 to 9. If you want different hours, if you want to do something and you don't think you need to go through the special event process, you do.
Yeah.
How that?
Yeah, you do.
That's the deal.
I'm just going to reiterate one of the requests for the residents near Swanee for some time now has been, can the start time be later for amplification weekends? Like a weekday, that's one thing. Kids are going to school and stuff, but can they have like a quiet morning? And so there was a request for 8 or 9 a.m., but I don't know if anyone else is. I don't personally have a problem with that because I've watched people like the marathon organizers deal with radios that are just, they're talking to each other. They don't have to blast across the whole park, but I guess you could argue.
All of those events that start that early, aren't they special events?
Yeah,
So
but it doesn't change the amplification hours.
I'd support that.
If an event will be evaluated on its own in terms of when amplification would be allowed or not allowed, right? Each event sort of is its own
Yeah,
beast,
I mean, but the
so-
idea is if you're the person sitting in the chair who has to decide when the event comes before you, doesn't it help, like for those two parks, if they're more sensitive to know that we don't really want amplification before a certain time in the morning? I'm just saying on weekends, if there are residents who would prefer it not to start till 8 or 9 in the morning, I don't have a problem with that.
I agree.
That's part of their quality of life.
I don't have a problem with 8 or 8.
I feel like the parameters that we set the outside limit and staff.
Right.
We're setting parameters.
Can decide
for
from there.
Okay.
for the implementation.
So you want that specified in this document, or is that specific to the special?
That's a special event.
You can put it in the
Permit.
other one, but because it gets confusing because this document talks about amplified sound, so that then, gets everybody confused. So
Well,
it probably
that's
does
why we're gonna
depend.
say not
It probably
special event.
belongs, the language probably belongs in the special events one, but because this document refers so much to amplified sound, the questions arise now, yeah. So it would be nice if that, yeah. And because it is specifically two parks that are more sensitive, it'd be nice if that got written in somewhere. And not everyone has to agree with me, but that is my personal feeling.
Well, and I don't want to say what I said again, but amplified sound allowed under the threshold of a special event permit. Otherwise, you're
Right, that's what all of this is though,
okay.
right? Special events is a whole exception to all of this potentially, because it goes through a more scrutinized process.
Okay.
So in other words, like slacklining, if somebody wanted to have a slacklining festival at Rotary Park, we would go through the permitting process to figure out if that made sense to allow that.
Okay. Maybe we'll do that. All right,
Yeah.
well then, are we okay to move on? Do we want to end this conversation and revisit it in a workshop?
Our 20-minute timer went off.
Our timer went off.
Yeah, I mean, but the issue is we already just revamped our, language having to do with special events. So now we're revamping the park policy. So when and how will that get addressed? I guess it's just the follow-up question.
Right?
Chapter 4.
Yeah, we made that whole new chapter 4, but we can make modifications to it if you decide that's what we need to do too.
Okay, so
Those
when the
some
park
smaller-
policies come back, can we just have a little update on how that got incorporated into
Okay.
special events, if that's where it goes. Yeah.
Is that where we're at? Is that what people want to do? Okay.
Yeah. How much more down do we have? Like, how close are we to the finish line here?
Hold on.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh, we got more.
We got more. Are we done here?
Can
Next
be.
meeting.
Cool.
Workshop next meeting. Yes? Okay, moving on. Oh, just elephant, one bite at a time.
Alrighty.
New business, section 9, we're at section 9. 9.1, proposed resolution 48, 2018, confirmation of mayoral appointment of statutory appointee and authorization to execute an employment agreement for our city treasurer, Chantel Lindsay. I am appointing Chantel to be our treasurer for the city of Moab. She's been in the treasurer's office for 8 years. She's our deputy treasurer. And we went through a process to be sure that the appointment was fair. And we are on the other side. And I am recommending to the council to approve my appointment. Is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll second.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm
That's all
sorry.
right. Yeah, I don't need to say another word.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tawny. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Congratulations.
All right. Settle down, people. 9-2. Welcome to the team. Okay. 9-2, proposed resolution 47, 2018.
She was here before any of us.
Welcome to the leadership of department. Bye, Jenny. Okay.
Check on that amplified park.
It is almost 9.
9-2, all right. Proposed resolution 47, 2018, boundary line adjustment for Powerhouse subdivision, amendment number 3. This would be an approval for property located at 1100 Sand Flats Road in the RA1 zone. This is not a zone change. This is not a subdivision. This is merely a boundary line adjustment.
That is correct.
The old BLA.
Starting with D.
The blah. We can approve that too.
Yeah.
Hungry.
I know.
I have bacon in my refrigerator. Didn't someone say bacon?
Who doesn't?
Somebody...
Yes, it's my bacon, lettuce, and avocado sandwich.
Yeah, you said bacon. I was like, am I dreaming of bacon?
It's all the...
I'm sorry.
It was a little hard to see on this, but I know you have a better copy in your packet. But the area that's involved in this is everything north of Mill Creek, and all that's shown on here is Englebright up to Sand Flats Road.
Thank you.
Currently, there are 2 lots here. This one is 6.01 acres, and this one's 17.68. And the action is to create 2 lots that are more equal in size. So we would end up with a new parcel 1 of 10.96 acres and parcel 2 of 12.74. No development is being proposed on this lot, either one of these lots at this time. And so that is your final plat right there.
Okay.
Any questions?
I just have one, it probably doesn't matter. The title for the agenda summary says consideration to review and adopt city council resolution blah, 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 conditionally recommending to city council. Is that like special language, the conditional part, or does that mean anything special I need to understand?
Yeah,
Okay.
Recommendations that we're recommending or proposing.
Okay, that was it.
Oh. Okay, thank you for showing us the maps. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt Council Resolution 47-2018 as submitted.
Thank you, Ronnie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Karen. Further discussion? Questions for staff? Cool. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thanks, guys. Thank you. You waited a while. Thank you. And moving right along, 9-3, Mill Creek Drive West Extension Project. Chuck? Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I'll have to ask yours for a second while I get my puck together here.
I'm liking what our screen is doing for like screen. It's like a screensaver, I think.
I think I've had like 6 seizures on it.
It's what?
Yeah, what do you see?
Yeah.
It's the Matrix.
Wow, that's like the third Matrix reference for today.
Was that right?
Yeah. I wonder why. Maybe we're plugged in.
Yeah, maybe there's a glitch.
What is the thing about the spoon in the Matrix? I'm
Bend it
buying
with
you
your
time, but
No, you are. Thank you.
yeah,
You can bend it with your mind if
if it's all just fakeness.
illusion, yes.
Yeah. I'm gonna bend my microphone.
Tried that.
Okay, we're ready.
Matrix. We could forgo government in the Matrix.
And thank you for taking us through this overview of the project.
Yeah, this is an exhibit, just as a quick reminder of where the road would be. This over here is where the new Mill Creek Road East has recently been constructed. Remember the old Flying Y has gone away. And that road was designed and used the local government money to align with the new road on the Mill Creek west side. And this is an exhibit that shows the roadway alignment. This area in here, I know it's difficult to see, but this is the Red Rock Properties parcel here. Then it goes into Sitla lands. You see there's one intersection designed in. This is a detention basin designed in for the roadway. And this is the road as it moves up.
It's not even public comment.
That's never happened before. I think you should answer it. What if it was like family? I love that you just unplugged it.
Well, we're kind of busy.
Thanks, Rachel.
It's like the red line. Yeah.
And then the road comes up, exits the USU parcel, and exits the Sitla parcel, and goes on to the USU parcel, and we'll finish out. And we took these graphics, don't exactly match up, but this was the preliminary USU layout for theirs. So it's about 1,900 feet of roadway, utilities, as described in the CIB application, water, sanitary sewer, storm drain, and we'll put in power, and we'll put in racing for the conduit for the university to bring up fiber optics later as that happens. Kind of a quick overview. We went out to bid. We received 9 bids, which was good, I think, and the low bid, excuse me, I'll just blow this up right here. Our engineer's estimate was $1,977,866. The low bid and what we're recommending award to is to Harrison Field Services, which is local in terms of Grand County. I honestly don't know if they're
local-ish.
Yeah, if they're city of Moab, but they're closer than Salt Lake anyway. Was $1,935,078. So that was a good buy. Bids won us in terms of that. We've checked on their references. We've looked at, they submitted all the appropriate documentation. Our design engineer helped us in the evaluation, and we see no reason to not recommend award to them if council decides to do so. They're our recommendation. Bids were as high as $2,322,000. So we're $400,000 differential there. We think it's the reason we got good bids on it are because it's essentially winter work. A lot of this is dirt work, including the utility installation.
paving to occur of council awards, paving would occur at end of May, is the schedule right now.
Oh, this doesn't include paving.
No, it does, it's just that's the timing.
It does, it's just paving is the last.
I got real nervous for a second.
No,
there.
paving's the last thing we do.
Thank you.
My point there was that we can't pave during the winter, but we can do all the prep work up to that, and then we pave in the end of May. So, and we also have done we have a signed plat, and just quickly, this is my last exhibit for now, unless you have questions. Orienting you, this is State Route 191, right-of-way. This is the area dedicated by Red Rock Partners. Then we enter onto Sitla lands and move through the Sitla lands to USU properties. And all of those property owners have dedicated the necessary right-of-way and easements for drainage and for cut and fill slopes for construction. They're signed. We have not recorded it. If council awards, we will then record it because we have to, our city attorney has to opine, I love that word, has to opine to the CIB board that we have secured the right-of-way. And in conversations with him, he's willing to do that. He's reviewed this. And if council awards, if you'll notice that the agenda item is recommend award subject to completion of the CIB transaction, because CIB requires council to award the bids before they'll authorize the financial package. If council does award, closing would be next Tuesday at this point, scheduled for the 16th. So we would then work with a contractor. Potential construction would start 1st of November.
Cool.
That's all. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion. I move to award a contract to Harrison Field Services for construction of the Mill Creek Drive West extension and approval of contract in the amount of $1,935,070.44, subject to the completion of the CIB bond transaction.
Thank you, Karen.
Second.
Thank you, Tawny. Discussion? I would like to say hooray. I'm excited to move forward. And I'm really excited to see USU at the end of that road.
I think there's been a lot, many years of very hard, very professional work that's gone into getting this project to this point that isn't always noted and isn't always seen. As long as I've lived here, this has been in the works, so it's good to get to this point.
And I want to thank council members of having critical questions as we've gone through the process, because it makes the process better and it makes us united when we get to the other end.
So it would be my, I want to see USU. I'm not, that's the whole reason all this is going on. So it would be my honor, I'm not sure if I'll qualify, to be the first person to pledge for local donors towards your program. We can talk about the amount in private, but I'm there, okay? My wife doesn't know I'm doing this, okay?
We're on the phone.
Funny. Cool. Any further discussion?
I'm just excited to get this momentum going.
Yeah.
I think this, like it was mentioned earlier from our representative, that it's going to create that ball rolling and the development that needs to happen for USU. So.
Yeah. Anything else? Thanks for sticking around. Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Party animals. Where are we? I am actually pulling 9-4 from the agenda, and Chuck is aware because of not having the link in time to just give us time to review. So this will be, 9-4 will be on our agenda for next council meeting. 9.5, proposed resolution number 44, 2018, adopting Utah Geological Survey Special Study 162 and the geologic hazards of the Moab Quadrangle, set of 13 hazard-specific maps. This is briefing and possible approval, and I just want to point out that this is a resolution, not an ordinance. Chuck.
Yes, Utah Geological Society Survey came and spoke with council back in June to present the maps. They talked about it, answered questions, and we said we'd come back later, and we're here now to ask council to adopt by resolution these maps so that we have some more standing when staff deals with developers, whether they're single-family developers, single-lot developers, or large subdivisions, in encouraging them to reference these maps to identify these hazard areas. That's why the resolution now. It sets the stage also for a potential geologic hazards ordinance, which I'm recommended to David. We haven't really firmed it up because it's not for me to firm it up, but that in next year's budget, that would be something that we would do, because I believe we need to do it, and I think there's a lot of support for that, and these maps would do so. In the interim, this gives us an ability to say, these are more than just Chuck's opinion that these are good maps. This has been adopted by council per resolution. And I was aware, I pulled up the floodplain map. I know, Kaylin, you had one question about the floodplain maps. They're identified in the colors, the geologic floodplains, and in the hatched areas there are the FEMA maps, the Federal Emergency Management Agency maps that we regulate to. So they're inclusive of this. Those are the current maps. They don't preclude each other. Okay. It's just that some of those, their geologic floodplains, they rank it as they really should look in great detail, or they should at least do a reconnaissance level study for areas of flooding that haven't been identified for Mill Creek and Pack Creek, because that's really all at the, and of course the wetlands floodplain from the Colorado River, but otherwise those are our only mapped FEMA floodplains. So this gives us a larger data set to recommend to developers to look at and for us to review.
Are we going to make these available on our website under the Maps tab?
Yes, ma'am.
That's cool.
We will do that.
Okay. Thanks, Chuck. Is there a motion?
I will move to adopt the Utah Geological Society Survey, Special Study 162, and the geologic hazards of the Moab Quadrangle, set of 13 hazard-specific maps.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tani. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Was there a comment? Oh, okay. Oh, call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
One final item on our agenda, 9.6, proposed ordinance 2018-21, adopting the Community Reinvestment Project Area Plan for the South Moab Community Reinvestment Project Area. This is a briefing and possible approval. David.
Correct. Just a few slides for you in the spirit of slides. This is the next step with regard to what needs to happen for the community reinvestment area. As you'll no doubt recall, at your previous meeting, you approved the resolution that approved the interlocal agreement that said the county or the agency is allowed to operate within the city boundaries to do things in the project area. And I said to you then, that's not, the details about what happens in the project area are coming at the next thing. This is the next thing. This is the project area plan. The project area plan looks like that. And it says final on it, but that doesn't mean final to you. It just means final to the county council. This is the version that they passed, as well as the agency itself. So it's got some length to it. I tried to boil it down for you so that if you wanted to hear the short version, I can give you that. We talked about the steps there. They're really basically what this does is outline what the project area is for. The project area is to benefit principally the USU campus development and what happens on the campus. It does establish some very broad standards for development within the project area. Again, acknowledging that and reiterating that all city permitting, regulation, land use all applies regardless. Anything that the project area plan would do would be more detailed or more restrictive than what's in our underlying regulations, and it would be with regard to how the agency would give out money. So in other words, if somebody wanted to come in and do an apartment complex, the agency could say, well, we want an apartment complex that absolutely will have, just to be absurd, they'll have no exterior lighting. And, well, maybe that's wrong because that would be against the code. But they would have 12-foot sidewalks instead of 6-foot sidewalks because we think we really need them up there. That's something that the agency would have in their stance for development for the projects that they would approve for the project area. So that's one thing, but really the big meat of it is that there are 4 areas where the project area funds would be spent in a broad sense. One is the development of moderate income and essential workforce housing, establishment of new business, the development of campus and other facilities on the campus, and then public infrastructure improvements. And that, again, is things that we've talked about. That could include enhanced street lighting. It could include the underpass, the pedestrian bike underpass under 191. Those kinds of improvements are what are included in that. And then, let's see, I think this is the last slide. Zachariah and the agency incorporated some of the suggestions that came from you all to date, including the requirement for a deed restriction related to housing projects that the CRA would pay for. And then also allowing for agency funds to be used to pay down our debt service on the road project, the infrastructure project, and also a stronger reference to the general plan in there for reference. What it does not include, just really quickly for the record, is any commitment of city funds or city sales tax increment at this point.
Okay. Is there a, well, let's have a discussion before I call for the motion. I have not been contacted by any school board members as to whether or not they support or do not support. Have any members of this council been contacted by the school board?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And what is their, why didn't they call me?
Well, I just ran into one on the street.
What
We
this,
talked for half an hour.
what did they say at you?
It was Jim Webster, and he was supportive.
Okay. Who else?
Melissa Bird,
Mm-hmm.
and she's undecided.
Okay. She's the chair. Anybody else?
I spoke to Melissa too.
Mm-hmm. Undecided.
And Brittany, what's her last name? Ellis, undecided. And Beth is, I'm not sure.
Beth is having a going away party.
Yeah, yep.
But I did see her and she didn't mention whether or not she did or did not support this.
So is this, I've never.
Go for it. Mm-hmm.
So I would like to table this until we have a larger discussion with the school district and Zachariah. Because it sounds like the county voted for it last week.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll
Yes.
second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes 4-1. We're done. Section 10, approval of amendment of the bills against the city of Moab.
I make a motion to pay the bills in the amount of $772,441.45.
Thank you, Karen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Connie. Any discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Also excited.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.